Good morning. Good morning, everybody. This morning, want to take the opportunity to welcome each and every one here. I will identify the groups that are here. And I want to thank you, first of all, for coming. And I look forward to engaging discussion because there's an important issue. This morning, what we are going to discuss is the status of implementation of the recommendations on IT governance and general controls as stated in the Auditor General's report for the financial years 2016, 2017, and 2018. So I want to take this opportunity to welcome officials from the Auditor General's department, including the Auditor General herself, Ms. Pujadas, who is here, representatives from the Ministry of Planning and Development, representatives of the Ministry of Public Administration, and also from the National Information and Communication Technology Company Limited. I also want to take the opportunity to welcome any members of the public who are here, and especially members of the media who are present or who are looking on to cover. I am chair of the Public Accounts Committee, and my name is Boindra Tiwari. I'm the member for Caroni Central. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Committee is to follow up on the status of the implementation of the recommendations on IT governance and general controls as stated in the report of the Auditor General in their 2016-17 and 2018 public accounts reports to determine the challenges being faced and possible solution to these challenges. The stakeholders whom I identified previously are all here and represented, and again we want to say thanks for coming and we welcome you here. And I don't want you to feel any pressure. The questions we're going to ask you are straightforward questions. I mean, they might be a little hard sometimes, but it's things that you would know or you can address. So I don't want you to feel any pressure about that. Let's just try and give the public the information that is important to them and so that we understand, because at the end of the day, based on this meeting, we write up recommendations which are then responded to by your line ministers, okay? So this meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM, and also on the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic to either the email address, which is parl101@ttparliament.org, or to facebook.com/ttparliament on Facebook, or to Twitter @ttparliament. So in sequence, I will ask the Auditor General to introduce herself and also any members who are with her. And also the same for the Ministry of Planning and Development, the same for Public Administration, and the same for National Information and Information and Communication Technology Company Limited. So would you please introduce yourselves, first of all, and then I will ask members of my committee to do the same. Although you may know them, I think it's important for them to introduce themselves to you. Okay, so could we start with the Auditor General?
Good morning, Dr. Tiwari and other distinguished members of the Public Accounts Committee. I am Laura
Pull the mic to you. Yeah.
I am Laura Pujadas, Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and with me are three members of my team that were involved in the audits of the ICT within the public service within the years 2016, 2017, and 2018. And through you, Chair, I would invite them to introduce themselves.
Good morning. I am Louis Hernandez, Acting Assistant Auditor General.
Good morning. I'm Neela Dwarka Ali, Audit Director.
Good morning. My name is Desmond Noel, and I'm Acting Assistant Auditor General.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. I am Aileen Allen Ovid, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Planning and Development, and through you, I would like the members of my team, we have 3 members of the team from the Ministry of Planning in attendance, and I'd invite them to introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Keen Brian, ICT Director, Ministry of Planning and Development.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Peter Mitchell, Acting Director, Project Planning and Reconstruction Division.
Morning, Mark Joseph, Project Monitoring Officer, Project Planning and Reconstruction Division.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Public Accounts Committee. Joan Mendez, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Administration. I will ask my team members to now introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members. Claudel McKellar, Deputy Permanent Secretary.
Good morning, Chair, members. Ms. Shanaz Mohammed, Public Sector ICT Specialist.
Good morning, Chair members. Dejon Palmer, ICT Policy Strategy and Development Specialist.
Good morning, Abigail Baino, Manager Policy, Strategy and Monitoring.
NICTC Company Limited. Yeah.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. Sean Rock, Chairman of iGovTT. With me, I have 2 members of my board and 3 members from executive management. Through you, I'd ask them to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chair and members. Jacqueline Morris, member of the board.
Good morning, Chair and members. Vashti Maraj, member of the Board of Directors.
Good morning, everyone. Charles Bob Semple, Deputy CEO.
Okay. Good morning, Chair, members. Christine Ferreira, Head of Finance and Administration.
Good morning, Chair and members. Sherwin Raghunanan, the Head of the Operations Unit at iGovTT.
Okay. And I already introduced myself. I'll start on my right with Senator Henry.
Morning, everyone. Leslie Henry, member of committee.
Good morning, Paula Gopi, school member.
Good morning, all. Taharko Bika, Vice Chairman.
Goindra Tiwari, Chair.
Good morning, Ayana Webster Roy, member.
Good morning, Adrian Leons, member.
All right. Okay, well, we'll begin with some general questions, and then we would, we will begin with some general questions, and then each member will take a turn to ask questions. Some of them will be questions that have already been prepared. Some of them might derive out of the things that you say when you answer. But before I do that, I would ask the Auditor General to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Chair. Just to give a little bit of background as to how we have reached where we are and how we've reported. The former Auditor Generals of the day, they recognized that government ministries, departments, and agencies were increasingly adopting information and communication technologies to conduct their functions and deliver their various services. This transition to electronic processing has triggered significant changes in the environment in which we are finding ourselves to audit. In recognition of this trend, one of our Auditor Generals, Mrs. Sharman Otley, sought to have our staff trained and some of them certified in the area of IT auditing. To this end, with the assistance of a certified IT auditor from the Office of the Controller and Auditor General India, we embarked on a number of pilot audits. And these were taken primarily with the purpose of assessing the business that were being undertaken by certain entities. And the aim of these was to gain assurances that the financial statements that were being generated were actually free from material misstatements. In so doing, we found that we needed to look at the actual IT general controls, partly because the IT general controls actually defined and facilitate the application controls. And we needed to be assured that the IT controls were in place to provide us to make sure that there was no weaknesses, and so that the reliability of these statements could have been further relied upon. So in 2016, we reviewed the IT governance framework, specifically the IT general controls at 7 ministries. These were the Ministry of Energy, National Security, Immigration Division, Ministry of Social Development, Family Services, Ministry of Works and Transport, Licensing Division, Ministry of Education, GATE, and Ministry of Finance, Project IRIS, Inland Revenue Division, and Treasury Division. And we have unearthed a number of weaknesses which were highlighted in the report, which we thought needed to be strengthened. Following on that, we sought in 2017 just to broaden our knowledge of the IC universe that existed. And with this in mind, we did not do a full audit, but what we did is we circularized to all ministries a document which we called Requests for Information on ICT and Data Resources. And we also issued an ICT questionnaire, which we were trying to get a sense of what software was in place, what hardware was in place, what applications were being used. As indicated on page 78 and page 79, there is no separately classified estimates of expenditure to facilitate us knowing the actual expenditure that is being paid. We don't know. But based on the responses, and those were just the responses, at that time in 2017, approximately $529,900,000 was invested in ICT, and that was predominantly in hardware. We were unable to really get an assessment of the cost that was being spent in terms of the software. And further, what the responses revealed at that time is that there were no clear direction and standardization concerning ICTC. Each ministry seemed to have their own data needs, and they were using different applications, had separate databases, when there could have been a centralized repository, therefore achieving some sort of economies of scale. We also looked at the policies, and we would determine that a number of the policies at that time were in draft and had not been fully communicated or rolled out to the ministries. And the Ministry of Planning, which was responsible for ensuring that requests were facilitated for IT projects releases, were not properly monitoring the ICT through the entire public service to get a perspective, but rather were evaluating each project on a project-by-project basis. So those were some of the weaknesses that were highlighted in the 2017 report. I'm happy to report in 2019 we followed up with an update, again another questionnaire, and the Ministry of Public Administration has provided us with responses which we have evaluated, and further detailed analysis will need to be done on those as well. So thank you very much, and that's my opening so far.
All right, thank you very much. We'll follow up on some of the issues that you raised in that report. I'll ask the Permanent Secretary in Ministry of Planning, please.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Ministry, I'd like to say that we are happy to be here today to review this important issue of governance and policy structures with regard to ICT in the public sector to ensure that there's effective implementation and value for money. And working with the Ministry of Public Administration, it is the Ministry of Planning's intention moving forward to develop a harmonized approach from conceptualization to implementation of ICT projects, and to ensure that projects that are being included in the PSIP, in the Public Sector Investment Program, are in accordance with Vision 2030 and the National ICT Plan. And the Ministry is working assiduously with the Ministry of Public Administration to ensure that this takes place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Administration.
Thank you, Chair. Good day, members. I'm pleased to be here to provide information on the implementation of the recommendations relating to IT governance and general controls as stated in the reports of the Auditor General on the 2016, 2017, and 2018 public accounts. I want to acknowledge the Auditor General's department and their focus on ICT in the public service in the last 3 years, and emphasize the Ministry's commitment to work with them and all stakeholders to improve public service efficiency and effectiveness. The Ministry of Public Administration's mandate covers public service modernization and national ICT. Digital government intersects both of these areas. Digital government is concerned with the use of ICTs to improve public service delivery in the front end and the back office. The Ministry would have provided a written response to the committee prior to this meeting. From these responses, the committee would have noted 2 key updates: that we have established the GILA, the Government ICT Leadership Advisory Council, a forum of ICT managers in the civil service, and that we are working on several policies and standards for use in the public service. The committee would also have noted that MPA is collaborating with the Ministries of Finance and Planning and Development to design and implement expenditure and budgeting controls to improve ICT governance. With regard to staffing, the Ministry of Public Administration would have provided information that the Public Management Consulting Division, PMCD, is in the process of undertaking a review of the technical and functional support units of all ministries and departments. In this exercise, the composition of IT units is being addressed to ensure the needs of all ministries are met. The ministry is guided by the Cabinet-approved National ICT Plan 2018-2022 as published on our website. Advancing digital government is one of the 5 strategic thrusts in the plan. In closing, I wish to state that the ministry does recognize the value and opportunities of ICTs in today's world, and we continue to be committed to championing ICT for national sustainable development and public service delivery. Chair, members, my team and I stand ready to answer members' questions or to make available any written submission that may be required to deliver on our digital government agenda. I thank you.
Thank you very much to both permanent secretaries for your opening statements. They're helpful, they give us context, and I'll proceed now to ask some questions. I will just ask 3 questions. The first question I'm going to ask, what I'm trying to do is to address the issue of the ICT challenge, the achievement of your objective of digital government at 3 levels. So I'm going to ask you about some things on what I consider level 1, some things at level 2, and an important question for the achievement of level 3, and perhaps even level 2 as well. So I will start with the first one. Now, and the issue is a simple question of readiness, preparedness, achievement, okay, of where you are then. How good are you in terms of communication and exchange of information among ministries? How good or strong are you in terms of financial accounting accuracy and security issues raised in the Auditor General report? How good or strong are you in the integration of systems and government systems? The Auditor General in her particular report mentioned the issue of things being ministries operating sort of on their own, disconnected, etc. How strong or effective are you in terms of citizen access for information on the one hand, and then citizen interface for service delivery and responsiveness? By that I mean, if I want to pay my taxes, or if I want to get a form and fill it out and send it back and get a response, those kinds of things. And the final thing in that, how strong or effective are you in terms of business support for competitiveness, including the ease of doing business issues which really require across ministry interventions and collaboration, etc. If you forget any of these things, you can ask, I will mention it. But it really goes from the individual citizen to some of the other things that the citizen in their different roles would want from government and the effectiveness from government in that process. Okay, who will answer that? Public administration or planning?
Seems I was elected. In terms of the communication, public administration, Ministry of Public Administration is the entity in charge of the policy development, ICT policy development. With respect to the implementation of projects and activities, we rely on our ancillary body, the NICT.
Okay.
So we will be sharing in terms of the responses. In communication, one aspect in terms of getting our communication out will be through presentations to the Board of Permanent Secretaries, through official correspondence, memos, and also through the body GLAC, which is really growing from strength to strength. I will ask my ICT policy specialist to elaborate on the work being done through GLAC and endorsing some of the communication strategies as well as the digital government agenda through that body. Can I ask Chair of IGov to probably elaborate on some of the other aspects?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning again. Thank you, PS. As you may be aware, the National ICT Company is really responsible for, and has been branded in terms of being the implementation arm for many of the policies and so forth that come from the line ministry. And to this end, in support of the National ICT Blueprint 2018 to 2022, we would have, and again, recognizing that there is a continuum, so some of these things would have been going on preceding the launch of the plan. We would have been providing support in many different, in respect to many different aspects. Now, in terms of one of the things that was mentioned in your question, and I heard mention of it again, as it relates to the Auditor General's report, in terms of not having sight of software expenditures, etc. One of the sort of the flagship initiatives that the company has been involved in focused on the use of enterprise software asset management, a framework and tools that would allow to have sight of many of the software related aspects across government. We're also looking at in our advisory capacity to the ministry, providing inputs in many different aspects as relate to several of the other initiatives that they would be working on. We're also responsible for the enterprise-wide type facilities. So for example, one of our flagship products would have been that of GovNet. In response to several of the challenges raised through GovNet over the years, in particular the aging platform, the company would have undertaken to find, and in light of the challenging financial environment that we're in, the company would have taken to work within the frameworks of the stakeholders that we engage with to strengthen that platform, which would involve refreshing the technology and making it something that is more agile and responsive for line ministry use on the back end as it relates to the facilitation of electronic service delivery. What we would have also done over the years is we've formed a governance subcommittee that has membership both within our company as well as with the line ministry to establish tighter communications. And since then, we've undertaken to develop a series of data-driven type initiatives, which some are still under development, but the intention is to provide information not only on the flagship products that are enterprise-wide, but also to provide that information for the various ministries via the permanent secretaries, etc., and GLAC, so that they would be able to also make data-driven decisions as far as possible. We have a slew of other products and services. Chair, I know you mentioned with respect to e-tax and so forth. So that would, in terms of the informational side, where that would fall would be under the information and access type product, which would be the TT Connect platform. The TT Connect platform itself focuses primarily on government information and services. In that respect, we have undertaken, despite the challenges financially and with respect to time, support for hardware and software, we've looked at economical ways to ensure the robustness of the platform. One of the reports that we look at in the subcommittee would relate to the uptime and business continuity management and so forth. Those are the types of things we're trying to encourage ingrown and to be more pervasive over whole of government. So that would be another area that we are using data to sort of pick up on as well. We have a few other products that we are working on which would assist with end-to-end government delivery. Those would include the current piloting for TT, GovPay TT. We've also, in response to another concern you raised, looked at GovChat. GovChat is a facility that would extend the TT Connect platform through the use of chatbot technology so that people can avail themselves of certain government informational services outside of the usual hours, and it also provides a transcript that can be used not only to mine citizens' concerns with an aim towards the deployment of new products and services, but it also allows us to see how traffic and how we engage with the citizenry in G2C type activities can transform over time to be more electronic in nature. If there's anything I forgot at this point, I would apologize, but I can always answer if further directed.
No, that's fine. I mean, I let you speak because you articulating on behalf of your institution what you are doing. But you see, remember we do this for the public's benefit, right? And we want them to know that's part of the democratic process. I mean, the reason why we have these things and we have them public is so that the public will know. So I want to do things in a way that the public will understand. So let's say in terms of communication and exchange within the system, if you had to say between 1 and 10, with 10 being the best that you can do, where would you be?
That's an interesting question. I think there's always room for improvement. That's a question on the spot.
Give me a number and I'll ask you a hard question. The public will understand the number easy.
I would say about 7.
7?
Yes.
Okay. On the issue of financial accounting accuracy and security, where would you say you are?
I can speak internally. I would say around 7 as well.
About 7. Integration of systems and government systems.
Integration of systems and government systems?
Yeah.
I'd say 7 going on to 8.
All right. So the integration is proceeding at a faster pace?
I would say so.
Because that is not the impression we get from the Auditor General's report. Now, the Auditor General did say she had a 2019 response that seemed to show some improvement, so I could ask her.
No problem. What I can say in response to that is that one of the core products I would have mentioned is GovNet. GovNet handles the support for a lot of the back-end processes. One of the challenges would have been in terms of the uptime, the software age, etc. And in partnership with our contractor alliance, we've been doing a refresh. Yeah. And from my best information, that refresh should be done by the end of September into October. That's the estimated time.
So you're better integrated as a set of government services.
I would say so, yes.
Okay, what about citizen access to information? I think from the platform that you have, it looks like, it seems to me from what you say that there is easy access to a lot of information. But what about the interface for service delivery?
Right.
How is that? How would you number that? 1 to 10?
1 to 10, I would say about 7 again.
You sure about that? You don't think your number is too high?
No, I mean, you asked for the opinion.
Yes.
And the basis, the criteria for that would be in terms of what I see as our remit and where we stand. There are particular challenges that would be responsible for some of the other variations in that scoring. So for example, we refer to government information access. We are responsible for providing the facility or the platform through which government agencies are able to disseminate information.
No,
we
not
would
the
be,
information.
Yes, and services.
I mean the services.
Right, and services, yes.
I'm conceding that you are good, you are fairly good on the information.
Right.
I'm questioning whether you are good enough on the services.
I would say that, again, there's room for improvement, yes, and that's why I didn't give myself a perfect 10.
But you say 7.
Yes,
right?
and the reason why I say 7 is because there are a few things that are piloting and that are under works right now that I think are transformational type ICT projects. So for example, there's the issue of GovPay, TT. GovPay TT, to me, is something that would allow government to citizen, government to business, and perhaps government to government type transactions to occur end to end. We are piloting right now. The technology is not the problem. The problem is more along the lines of making sure that the relevant interagency frameworks are in place. And from where I sit and my understanding, a lot of these things are underway. And as far as the national ICT company is concerned, we're there to support as needed to
You just tell me you're the
this.
implementer
Yes.
for the government.
Sorry?
You just told me that you are the implementer for
Yes.
government.
Yes, we provide that service.
Okay, what about, I mean, you raised an important issue, which is the ability to pay, to conduct services, etc., and pay for it. But what about the issue of support for business, interface with business, the competitiveness issue, the ease of doing business issue, which is across ministries? How is that? Because that is something that we have fallen in. And I think that's something, if we handled ICT properly, we could improve. So how is that? How would you rank that?
I would say that's a different animal, yes. I would rank that slightly lower. And the reason why is because a lot of the challenges are, again, not the ICT particularly. They're the interagency type things that—
Collaboration.
Yes. And those things take time to trash out, honestly.
Okay. Now, these are harder questions. So there's the stage 2 question.
So those questions weren't hard. Okay.
No, those were simple questions I just asked you. Because those are basic things. Those are basic things we want to have in this society, you see.
Yes.
I mean, most countries that you go to would have conquered those things. We have our own challenges, but I think we're trying to get somewhere. So the second one, which would really take it to the second tier, if you want to get to digital government, right, you really want to create a platform for what you might call the Internet of Things economy, right, which is our gateway, basically, to the absorption of technology, the leveraging of communication technology for business creation and growth and development purposes, and creating the conditions for integration with an artificial intelligence world. All right, now I know we are ways away from that, but cloud computing is a reality, right? Big data analytics is a reality today. Artificial intelligence is a reality. Now, given what you've told me about that first platform, how do we have a strategy, a set of steps to get to that point?
We as in the National ICT Company, we as in the Ministry of Public Administration through the ICT Blueprint.
Well,
I can speak for where I sit.
Yeah,
yes.
I am thinking of in terms of implementation and therefore how far we've gotten and how much further we need to go. I'm not asking you any trick questions.
I know.
I am asking you just so that we know what
yes,
is happening.
Agreed.
Right?
So I can respond to that, and I don't think that's a level 2 question yet, not to challenge you.
All right. What do you think it is?
But one thing that I forgot to mention would have been another one of our flagship products in a sense, and that one goes straight to something that resonates with me, which is the issue of human capacity development. I think that's one of the, in light of the developments within technology, I mean, technology changes every 18 months.
Sure.
Policy could never keep up with that. Where a lot of this stuff happens, and you've seen this going on over the entire planet. For example, take as an example the Cambridge Analytica and the social media and data protection and where it was a few months ago into last year. People are struggling to keep up globally, and I mean, I'm not saying that is the benchmark which we should measure ourselves by, but because it's just a challenge we have to find a way to overcome. But capacity is a big aspect of the plan. Now, if you refer to the National ICT Blueprint, you would see that one of the 5 strategic trusts focuses on that in alignment with the Vision 2030 from Ministry of Planning. And in respect to that, one of the things that the company has undertaken is to develop a product called HackTT. HackTT is a hackathon, and what we've tried to do through this, this is the first offering this year, and I believe that the awards for the finals would be next week. Yes, next week. What we tried to do is to engage tertiary level institutions to have kids tackle some of these application-centric problems, which would then be more impactful and really be closer to the citizenry in terms of the ability to benefit from e-government type services. And I mean, the services that we've looked at would be things that they develop the ICT solutions for in partnership with the private sector, mentoring them. And from what I've seen so far with respect to that, which is, again, responding to you in terms of the plan, one of the focal points I said is the human capacity side. That's where we try to capture a lot of the, we focus a lot on that. The other thing we focus on, as I mentioned before through the chatbot facility, is exploring things that relate to, for instance, data-driven decision-making. So, for example, looking at the chatbot facility, we can see what types of questions people ask outside of hours, etc. And that's something we would do internally as a way of hopefully developing a case study to do a sort of a perspective change, a change of thinking through these sort of pilot activities.
Given where, I know you understand where we need to be headed.
Yes.
All right. Where are we, 1 to 10?
Right. So where are we 1 to 10 with respect to those things? I would say about 8 in terms of the mindset and in terms of the things I would have mentioned. Again, with respect to if this applies to, my argument here is it applies to certain services we are playing with, and the model can be extended following. So it's sort of developing the supporting the foundational things.
So you are saying that we are 8 out of 10 in readiness, in terms of readiness for the Internet of Things economy?
I would say that that's where we are from where I sit.
I find that very difficult on the basis of my personal experience and on the basis of my knowledge of how this society operates to agree with that. But I won't challenge you because I'm not an expert in it. But it is something that I think that that is critical in our development. And the final question is a quick question. I don't know who wants to answer this, which is, are we anywhere near to the establishment of a unique identifier as part of the system of the use and deployment of ICT services and the digital age?
I could answer that, but I could also defer to Charles.
Hi, good day. Just to clear up and clarify in the conversation that Chair would have been having, he'd have been relating it in terms of infrastructure that we have and deployed. Some of the questions are based in terms of our readiness for cloud computing and Internet of Things.
That's right.
It goes a bit beyond, right? So just to clarify with that regard, so yes, 8 in terms of what we have, but in terms of the cloud aspect of things and our readiness for Internet of Things, it's probably like around a 2. And the reason for that is we have been trying for some years to have a cloud policy approved. It's at Cabinet, and it requires approval because a lot of persons are desirous of moving into infrastructure that can be scaled easily. And so the ministry undertook an exercise to interact with stakeholders so that we can liaise and determine how do we move forward. Because what you find happening when we take long to do these things, some ministries and so on make decisions on their own because they need to spend less money and achieve more. What we have attempted to do within iGovTT as well, and it is coming before the subcommittee that Chairman would have spoken to you about, is in us having a facility where local persons can provide a local type cloud, because we do understand some of the concerns that were raised by Cabinet is where the data is stored and things like that. Because of the toing and froing, and time is passing, and sometimes we take years to make certain decisions, you would find that sometimes we could be much further along the line. Yes. But at this point, we are a bit low there. Once things like this approved, we'll be much further along the pathway. So that was just to address that aspect. And with regard to the your second question.
Unique identifier.
Unique identifier. We have had a unique identifier that was approved by Cabinet in 2008, 2009. The identifier is TT Connect ID. This is the ID you will use to file taxes, as well as to conduct business with TT BizLink. Now, we are currently in some discussions with, for instance, Health want to proceed and do their thing. The concept will be shared services. So while the unique identifier will be TT Connect ID, for instance, if you are desirous of...
That's my final. You want to go next? Yeah.
So if you are desirous of, for instance, deploying a service, what we will have is your system could have its unique identifier, and we will have an interpreter in between that unique identifier. So I'm Charles Bob Semple, and just take, for instance, Legal Affairs has a system, and within that system, I am number 1. We will have a translator that will translate number 1 in Legal Affairs system to TT Connect ID 9307. And the reason for this is because we understand that it takes a while for all persons to be on board with the same thing, for Legal Affairs to agree with customs and to agree with all ministries. I mean, that is unrealistic. Now, even in Estonia, you have those things, and it took a while to advance. So what we will have is each ministry or agency or division, they develop their service, and we have an interpreter in between to translate that Dr. Tiwari in this system is 1, in this next system he is 9, in this other system he is 302. But the unique identifier that will cross-thread all of them
would pick up the difference.
Would pick up the difference. And one of the things we will do is determine the single source of truth. So a lot of persons may capture addresses, but there's supposed to be a single source of truth for address. So if, for instance, we generate a certain type report, or we need certain type of information, and a subset of it is address, it will take that address from that specific service. That is what we have in training, that is what we have documented, and as services come on board to be deployed, that is what we are utilizing.
Okay. I wonder if you could give me a quick answer to this before I move on to the next questioner. I mean, for us to have an integrated ICT platform in government that really works, interfaces and supports the private sector to do what they are supposed to do, respond to the citizen in a way that they would like to respond, and to get the system to move up in the value chain. Does that, from your experience and knowledge, should that be centrally driven?
Centrally driven by policy and generally providing infrastructure, which is what the chairman would have been alluding to, that we are doing those things. So those things are quote-unquote ready, except for the cloud aspect, right, as we spoke.
Okay.
In terms of the driving of the other things and the services, that once we indicate this is the standard, this is what is expected, this is the infrastructure we'll utilize, then it's driven by the owners, which will be the ministries themselves. And that is not an issue once we have the things defined, as in the example I provided, once we have the interpreter in between, and Mr. Mitchell would like to do something by his ministry, we don't need to hold him back because we need to centrally manage it. We will provide all the resources and infrastructure and provide him with guidelines so that when he completes, then his system could speak with Mrs. Gopi Schoon and so on, rather than us trying to control everyone in here. You know, we set policy in place, the governance that was alluded to by Auditor General. We have those things in place, so we have the governance, so everyone is aware what others are doing, and we provide the respective infrastructure.
Okay, so central policy, coordinated, decentralized operations.
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Ayana Webster, I'll come to you after she was before.
Just listening to the conversation and taking into consideration those viewing, you said that the policy is already in place, right? Who is to drive the policy? Is it IGov-TT? Is it Ministry of... So that the public could understand, I could understand, who is to drive the policy to ensure that policy is in motion and the public would benefit?
So what we will do, we'll be able, together with the Ministry of Public Administration, identify some gaps, right? And in terms of some of the valuable information that provided in the report, be able to see gaps we may not have seen before, right? We would help craft and draft it, but in terms of the execution and drive, it lies with the Ministry of Public Administration, who, via the minister, will have representation within cabinet.
As I indicated, the ministry is responsible for ICT policy and development. And through the mechanism of the establishment of GLAC, we are able to coordinate. Everybody is on board. This is our NS and ICT plan. This is our agenda for digital government. And through the GLAC mechanism, we are able to monitor and even evaluate in time how the policies are being implemented. I'll take the opportunity to ask Ms. Mohammed to explain the mechanisms that are utilized through the GLAC body. Ms. Mohammed, thank you.
Hi, morning again, everyone. So the GLAC has two layers. It has a strategic layer and an operational layer. The strategic layer pretty much involves, or is comprised of all ICT practitioners and leaders within ministries, departments, and agencies. The operational layer, this is pretty much smaller committees comprised of like 8 to 10 persons within different ministries, departments, and agencies. The operational committees, they deal with the policies. So we have a policy committee, we have an infrastructure committee, and a communication committee. We're currently updating ICT cabinet-approved policies, dated policies. So we're working on, like, for instance, the email and internet usage policy, asset management policy, and we do this in a team in a very collaborative way. So some of the rules I could tell you for the technical committees are they provide recommendations on the development and revision of the policies, identify specific issues with the policies, share any relevant policies that they may have within operation that could align to the whole of government policy we're trying to create. I'm pretty much as it.
So for the average man or woman out there, whenever they hear about ICT and ICT in relations to government, the first agency that would come to mind is IGov. I'm being honest. Whenever I think about IGov. so that the public, again, so that the public understand how does it fit? Where is iGov within the agenda? How is iGov assisting government ministries and agencies to ensure that policy is put into practice? Again.
So I will take it first and then maybe Mr. So iGov is always part of the policy revision or development process. So we select we work again collaboratively. We select the policy together. They have a policy department that will look at it. They attend all the policy, the GLAC meetings. So, and they support us in terms of chairing these technical committees. Yeah, Charles?
Thanks. Yeah, so that is accurate in terms of the one of the areas that could be better as a country is in terms of us doing what the policies say as a country, as all ministries and so on. You mentioned a word there, enforcement. How do we do those things? At present, it is, I would say, is true. All of us understanding that this is the best thing to do, and this is the most appropriate way to move forward with expenditure. Beyond that, if, for instance, you as a ministry were to go out of policy, as far as I'm aware, there are not very much tight things in place to enforce and indicate, no, you're not doing that, or stop is advisory again. And our role really is implement and execution. In terms of enforcement closer, it will be more apart from the GLAC, PS will have a word with your PS and be like, guys, are you aware of this? And rotate the call circulars and so on again. So those are the things that take place at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you. I really wanted to go straight to the National ICT Plan, ICT Blueprint, but you raised the question of the cloud policy, and I think we just jumped ahead of the public, and it would have been nice for you to say what it is and how would the government benefit from this cloud policy, and if what are the handicaps? But I want to tell you also that the TT BizLink has actually migrated to the cloud already, and so therefore we would like the rest of the institutions to move on with it, and I know that it's going to be through you. But always we're here for the public, so tell us about the policy and what are the benefits of it.
Sure. So the cloud environment, there are three environments. On-premise, which is, yes, let's take, we have PCs, and we have all of our computers in one room in our house. And then we have cloud, which is an environment where your PC is hosted by someone else, a PC type environment. We have several of them like Google and Amazon and so on. You pay a subscription to utilize the service, and if you need to expand or reduce, you pay accordingly. So, and the third is a hybrid, which is you have some things in your house and you have some things in the cloud. So for example, some of us may use things like WhatsApp. So your data is stored in a different environment, is not on your computer, is not on your phone. Some of us use Google Drive. It is not anything within country, it's not in your home. So those are some examples for clarity. Some of the pros and cons. Let's start with some pros. The pros of a cloud environment is we could scale up, we could scale down as we want. We based on the subscription in terms of maintenance and so on, it is as a part of the subscription. So you don't pay WhatsApp when you want to maintain the service is up. The pro with on-premise, a lot of us still like to see things, so I could see the box there, it's physically here, I could touch it. Technology is moving beyond those things in terms of us measuring that against being hosted in cloud. Government's data is a bit different. We do have some acts and so on that speak to jurisdiction of data, where data resides. And although the cloud may be in Europe, it may have to hop through certain jurisdictions, which may or may not be a problem. The cloud policy attempts to address those type of things, and whether or not we truly have a challenge with our data residing somewhere else, because while we could see the computer here, someone could still be tapping into the computer and retrieving data. Or if our environment is not as secure as where the other servers are stored abroad or in whichever other jurisdiction, then we may have a false thinking that the data is more secure, or the thinking may be right. The cloud policy is meant to provide a guideline for us to have a seasoned discussion about it, because you also have data classification. And if it is indeed that some data needs to be on island or on premise or in your room, as the example I gave with the PC, then certain information can be there, and then certain information is okay if it's out there. And the cloud policy is an attempt to bring those things to the fore so that we could address it at a cabinet level.
Thank you.
You're
so
welcome.
Basically, it's more cost-effective and more efficient as well. So let me go to the substantive issue which I wanted to raise and we've been talking about, which is the National ICT Plan and ICT Blueprint, which is supposed to provide a framework for ICT development within our country. And the plan is, the implementation is categorized into 10 targets as we understand it. And it's a 4-year plan, and we're coming to the end of the 2nd year. And so you're midstream, and you've already rated yourselves as 7 out of 10 in terms of implementation. So I'd like to ask you, what have you implemented? What are your achievements? What systems have been put in place and so on? But I know that you would have had some challenges. We've been talking about that, and some of your challenges are probably within the ministries, and that the auditor's report speaks to a gap analysis that should have been performed at ministries with a view to determining the readiness of persons there, and therefore identifying the skills or lack thereof and the competencies or lack thereof and so on. So I want you to touch on that and the question of the central database of biodata. But generally, I want this addressed in terms of what are your achievements of the ICT blueprint having reached the midway mark.
Okay, I guess I'll start, and hopefully people will continue. So, like I said before in the scoring, I just want to make it clear I'm responding from the perspective of the National ICT Company, and I understood that there are certain things which are external to the company. So, for instance, when Charles would have suggested a slightly different scoring, it's because he's looking at some other aspects which are generally outside of the remit of the company. So I just wanted to make that clear first in the statement. Now,
no,
yes,
I think he made the right distinction,
yes,
which is the difference between hardware and implementation using the software capability and the human resource capacity.
Agreed.
And that is important.
Agreed. Now, in response to the question, what I can say is that several things are doing. So, for example, one of the biggest products would have been to enable the back-end systems to be sufficiently reliable and so on, such that the government and the ministries, divisions, and agencies have a platform whereby they can springboard for the delivery of e-services end-to-end. That is the GovNet platform. So that is an infrastructural issue. So in terms of the infrastructure, as I would have mentioned before, that is one of the things that we would have worked with the Alliance to sort of come up with an approach that can allow us to make sure that we can deliver the infrastructure as a service so that that foundational infrastructure is there and reliable. Because that is key for service delivery. And I would have mentioned as well that that has been ongoing, and to the best of my knowledge, that is something that should be completed within short order. That is, yes. So that is one important thing to note. I think that in one of the submissions you would have gotten, you would have seen, for instance, some of the data relating to the uptime of that facility, and it's improved over the last few years, right? The other side would have been the TT Connect platform, which is primarily the facility whereby governments can interact with the citizenry. And in terms of the core foundational things, and the challenge here, as you would have mentioned, is in terms of these things sit at a layer not necessarily below or away from the citizenry, and depend a lot on the applications that would come, let's say, from the different ministries who would leverage this hub to deliver services. So that would have been the challenge with respect to that aspect. So in terms of an accomplishment, I would say that we've put things in place to also make that platform more robust, and we've looked at, for instance, the internal governance arrangements, the data-driven type approach, the support provided for the facility, and again, at least through the numbers reporting on the uptimes and the incident reports, that would be something that has improved over the last few years. Another aspect, as the chair would have mentioned, is the issue of human capacity. Again, that's one of the important aspects of this whole web of initiatives and so on as relates to the National ICT Blueprint. And as I would have mentioned, one of the specific accomplishments we would have had is the deployment of the first year of our Hack TT. And as I said, Hack TT is the facility whereby we engage the youth. We use problems from the ministries that require ICT solutions, the first cycle of which has been reviewed, and the award ceremony should be next week. So I would invite, if anybody is interested and able to come, that would be something, or it would be in the media as well. So you could get a better sense as to what we're doing with respect to the putting people first aspect in the National ICT Blueprint, right? The other thing I would suggest outside of people, infrastructure, and the governance and communications, things that we've had accomplishments with, would be, as I said, trying to push more for the data-driven approaches to things. And that would be, as I said, through the reports that definitively suggest or inform us regarding when there are problems with the infrastructure and so on, right? The other aspect of iGovTT, which most of the public would not be aware of, is as relates to our mandate and our vision, which is about being not necessarily only the premier ICT solution provider for government, but also a trusted advisor. And as that would entail, it would involve the relationships between the ministries. You would have heard, for instance, our mention of GLAC and the role we play with respect to providing inputs into the various documents that are with the line ministry. So in that regard, for instance, the cloud policy and so on, that's where we would have a direct input. So that's why, as I said, in terms of our achievements, and notwithstanding the fact that the plan is midway, I'm thinking along the continuum of where we are right now and where we need to be to provide not only advice to the government to support their thrust to digital government, but also to provide the foundational hub through which government to citizen, government to business, and government to government type services can be deployed.
Chair, through you, I would like to respond to member, Mrs. Koopy-Scoot, and remind the public that the NICT plan had 5 strategic initiatives: improving connectivity, improving human capacity, digital government, fostering economic development, and advancing the environment for societal benefit. At this time, basically, our human resource need to be upgraded. We need to develop. We need to, as you know, see what are the needs, particularly in our IT departments. And through PMCD's work, we will able to have the professional and the type of capacity, and through GLAC and the public administration do the development. From the discussions this morning, you will notice that we really have been focusing on the three aspects: improving that connectivity, trying with our human capacity development, forging ahead in some respects with digital government. But we need to address fostering our economic development. We need to address advancing the environment for societal benefit. Through collaboration with some international organizations, the International Telecommunications Union, the ministry has engaged that entity to help us in terms of metrics, how we can do better monitoring and evaluation of our performance, monitor and evaluate how we are implementing, but also helping in some capacity building. We are also looking at early in the financial year, engaging with Estonia, looking at the best practices there and see how we can learn, but of course using our own indigenous skills and capacity to develop the type of system, the ecosystem that is relevant to the needs of Trinidad and Tobago. I will ask Mr. Palmer, who has been working with respect to those projects, to give some more elaboration. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Chair. As EPS would have mentioned, we would be working with our colleagues at Estonia, looking at how we develop a number of projects. We would have mentioned some earlier, the identity project in particular. That is one of the projects we are looking at, and how we can develop internal capacity to roll out that type of initiative across governments. Another one of the projects that you all would have mentioned earlier, an interoperability framework for government. You have touched on it a number of times, and how we roll out that project is very integral to different ministries, all MDAs in fact, and it's important that we get it right this time around. I should say, fortunately for us, ministries have shown a lot of support through our GLAC in getting a lot of these projects off the ground. Estonia has pledged support to us, and we hope that once we get our approvals, that we can move forward with that initiative. This leads us into the issue that was raised in terms of service delivery. Basically, an interoperability framework allows ministries to roll off their projects in a lot shorter period. It means that the ministry will be able to support other ministries' works, support service delivery, support interaction with citizens, with government, and so forth.
Quick follow-up.
Just a quick follow-up. You talked about improving connectivity. So could you just tell me quickly, if I'm in Cedros or in Toco, TT Connect, is it easy to access?
Right. So there are a number of initiatives that we are looking at in terms of access and connectivity. The TT Wi-Fi project being one, as well as the Star.TT centers. So, for example, if you're in Cedros, those locations, the ministry is eagerly looking at, through our digital divide survey and the support of iGovTT, as well as STAT, those areas that are otherwise underserved, and how we are actually rolling out services in those areas. And in some instances, it may be a situation of just providing access to Wi-Fi. In other areas, it may be need for a center, such as the Start.TT centers, to roll out services inclusive of training and so on in those areas. So currently we have, I think it's about 8 centers, and we continue rolling out centers as we move forward. If I may add, the ministry is also looking, currently looking to roll out just over 100 access points or access hubs through the TT Wi-Fi initiative. That is looking at hospital waiting areas, transit hubs, as well as national libraries, so that citizens can get access across the country from Cedros to Toco, as well as in Tobago.
Senator Tahak.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning again to all. My question speaks to the report, 2017, on page 85, there were some recommendations regarding the regional health authorities and the ministry, the regional health authorities and the Ministry of Health. And you're getting a sense that there's a lack of collaboration and coordination amongst the RHAs and the ministry. And I want to ask the Ministry of Public Admin as well as IGovTT, what are the challenges being faced in terms of collaborating, and what solutions are there, and what would a fully coordinated effort mean for the public? Would it mean that our medical records will be electronically available from the point of inception? What exactly would be the benefit to the citizenry?
So if I could just clarify your first point in terms of there being a lack of collaboration, I think that what we're seeing is that a number of systems are being rolled out across different MDAs, and given our current situations, ministries have their each have their agenda. And
sorry, just like Mr. Palmer, MDAs?
Ministry departments and agencies, my apologies.
Thank you.
Ministries having their own agendas will try to go ahead with their initiatives. However, at MPA, we would ensure to collaborate with all of the ministries, IT staff, directors, PSs at all levels, to ensure that we are aware as much as possible of the projects they're doing and try to integrate as much as possible. And this is where, going back to what I would have said earlier, there's need for the interoperability framework, and there's need for the cloud computing policy, which we are waiting on eagerly, so that we can have these systems that are currently being rolled out by ministries integrated into the whole of government approach. But we would have liaised regularly with the Ministry of Health. The IT managers sit on our GLAC committees, various committees, and we regularly we coordinate efforts through that committee.
However, I'm not sure if, thank you for the response. I'm not sure if I understand, I'm fulfilled with what I was asking, because the Auditor General's report for 2017 specifically points to a lack of collaboration in the ministry, between the Ministry of Health and the RHAs. So would it be possible to address that response, or if it will have to be addressed subsequently, in terms of what are the specific challenges that they're facing that could be overcome with ICT, and what would be the result? Would it mean at the end of it, patients will have a seamless access where the records are concerned, when they're getting pharmaceuticals within the hospitals and so on? What exactly would be the benefit from such a collaboration?
Right. Yeah, so my apologies, I would have to continue. So as we are aware, the Ministry of Health is currently restructuring their health information management system, and they are looking at a health information management solution that I believe will incorporate or improve the collaborations between the ministry and the RHAs. As it stands, again, it goes back to the need for interoperability across ministries and their agencies and sub-offices. So we've been in collaboration with the ministries, looking at these solutions and providing support where necessary. But I know that that system is in train, and hopefully that should provide some, improve the collaboration between the ministry and its RHA.
Okay, so then I need to, I guess, ask a closing question. Would it be, at the end of this, either for the ministry or IGovTT to answer, would it be at the end of this collaboration, or how much time, in terms of years, for example, can we expect to get our medical records being accessible electronically, if not accessible electronically, within the system, within the hospital system, as opposed to this physical card system and so on?
I remember I'll share as much as I can this one, because it's something that is going on for procurement in a bit. But they are undertaking an exercise where two regional health authorities will be integrated. So, for instance, you go to one of them, and all your records are at that location, and you were to visit the next location, all your records will be there as well. So it's meant to be a pilot utilizing two RHAs, and the intention is that it, their intention is that it be continued and be rolled out to all.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I mean, isn't the system you want a system in which all patients' record could be in the same place, but wherever you are, you
Yes.
can access that patient's record?
Correct.
And the issue of, I mean,
Right, no,
of
that,
location
yeah.
is irrelevant.
No,
no?
correct. No, correct. What happened, the rollout of it, they are utilizing, rather than rolling out to everyone at the same time, that is the intention. So it's one system, right? But it will be rolled out at 2 institutions first. And from that, I guess it will be teething issues and so on, they resolve it, and they keep rolling out to all. The intention, exactly what you're saying, regardless of wherever you go, that is the intention. It's just that all of the other areas will not have access to that solution at the onset. Yes, correct. That is, but exactly what you're saying is the scope of the project.
Quick follow-up, and then Minister Leons.
So, quick follow-up. At the end of July, there was a reported hack at the Ministry of National Security's website. Sticking to the Ministry of Health here and persons' medical records, which is seen as very private information, which could compromise persons in many different ways. How can we be assured of this pilot, for example, and the eventual full rollout of security of persons' medical records?
Our head operations, he was instrumental in this exercise, and in terms of the infrastructure that was shared by the chairman, the solutions and the websites that were in our environment, they didn't succumb to what you're mentioning. What happened in that regard, the provider, the web services provider for those institutions didn't apply certain patches in their environment, and as a result, once they got into this one area, they had access to several. So subsequent to that, we did have interactions with CSIRT, and we assisted where we can, because CSIRT is the body under national security responsible for providing advice and so on in these environments. And so we provided our input and assistance to them where need be. With regard to the question specifically for this system, part of the scope is directly related with this, and the environments that we have that Chairman shared earlier, the intention is for it to be placed in such an environment, and that is 99.96% uptime, literally, and we have improved the infrastructure tremendously, and as mentioned, that project closes the end of this month, with knowledge transfer taking place in the months of October and November. So we shouldn't be fearful of that, but what we also be having is penetration testing in our environments to ensure periodic penetration testing to ensure that what we say the systems are capable of doing.
Mr. Leon.
Thank you very much. Some of what I wanted to ask, you would have been touched on before. I wanted to focus more on the security of information. You would have mentioned that the cloud policy is being worked upon and being finalized. I'm assuming GLAC is in charge of that, yes? Where are we with that, and how does that impact on the security of the information stored by the various government agencies?
As would have been indicated, it's before Cabinet at this time. We needed to address some issues that were raised at the Cabinet level, and it should be going back by next week in terms of the responses. So once they are satisfied with the responses, I do believe before the end of the month, we should have a cloud policy approved. GLAC would have been involved in the consultation and all the necessary engagement, as well as iGov, TAT, and other stakeholders in developing the policy. security issue was one of the issues raised, and we have addressed that in our response.
Let's not, no, not finished. In terms of what we are doing now, right, based on the little breach that we have, what you guide the government agencies, as you would have indicated, in terms of their rollout, you'll give their guidance. What are these security measures in your guidance, and are the security measures part of the proposed policy that to be approved?
Right. So in all of the sessions where we provide advisory services or assist them in the crafting of the terms of reference, a significant aspect of it will be the security of the system. If it is like for instance, we engage and we partnered with TSCT for the e-tender system, right? So that all procurement could take place online and so on. In any system where it, I would say, is not quote-unquote proven, there are certain tests and so on that will be mandatory. And one such test is a penetration test. In terms of access from out to in, but as well as where the data resides. So if it is in a data center, what level data center are we speaking of? What are the certifications of the persons within that data center? What are the physical security measures in there? Because we might be paying attention to one aspect, which is the technology side, but we leave out the physical side, you know? So in all of our advisory services, we incorporate several aspects of security. When the vendors bid, most times, if not all, the ministries will have us as part of the evaluation team. If we are doing the procurement, we will be there by default, and someone from the ministry will be chairing that committee, and the scores and so on for that aspect of security is rated accordingly. If they are not up to standard per se, but the person may have passed the threshold, in the negotiations phase, there will be discussions surrounding those items, because we do understand the importance of the security. And also was mentioned by the Vice Chairman in terms of the breach that took place the other day. You may have all these things in place, but no one is paying attention to simple things like patches and so on. Now, the purpose, and I mentioned the certifications of the persons working within whichever institution as the data center, whether local or abroad. There are certain things they must do and certain books they must sign, and there could be random audits done on them by the user in terms of, please provide me with this, and we do an analysis. In terms of ensuring that patches and so on take place, a lot of it depends on, in the analysis, of where the data will reside, whether it's cloud or locally, but the facility itself and the level of certifications of the persons there, as well as the institution itself, the data center, what tier it is at.
I'm happy to hear that, and PS would have indicated that will be addressed in any policy. What I would like to know is, in terms of the current situation, you would have expressed before that there were some breaches. Is there a report coming out of those breaches, and how is that addressed, right? Because for a situation like that, I mean, we're speaking about patches and this, but is it left on a desk, or is a document just sent as an advisory? How do we follow up to ensure the loop is closed in terms of the breach being mitigated against?
So in terms of this specific example, that entire exercise was undertaken by TTC Search, right? And we provided advice and also manpower to them. What takes place after that, a report is generated but even before the report is generated, the patches and so on would have had to occur. And the reason we are aware of what I share with you all is because of the very report that was produced. So we were able to understand why didn't it occur in GovNet, for instance, compared to these other websites being under threat. And that was the reason for the patches. Whether it's a proactive or reactive thing is a different discussion. On GovNet side, is proactive because these things are done, all of GovNet is in the data center, government's data center, and there are expectations. We have certain SLAs with them that they must abide by and provide monthly reports, and we do have governance meetings with them on a regular basis. With regard to TTC, certain report was provided. I know they fall under the Ministry of National Security. I know the items were addressed. In terms of if something is being put in place to proactively address all of them, we will be able to probably get some more information and advice subsequently, as they fall under a different umbrella body.
Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have interacted with iGov, and I can tell you that this team has been doing some really excellent work. But that being said, I want to follow on from Senator Obika's questions. You see, we can talk about policy and GLAC and all these different things. But what the Auditor General's report of 2017 has outlined is that ministries and departments continue to operate in silos. And I have first-hand experience of that with respect to the procurement and the implementation of ICT across. To the Ministry of Public Administration, how can we reduce this silo approach to ICT? Because no ministry or government department, to my knowledge, is mandated to go through or to adhere to the standards set by iGovTT. I have first-hand knowledge of that. And the Deputy CEO just alluded to it. Many of the ministries and departments, they go off and they procure their own websites. And they don't maintain them, they don't provide the patches, and they're susceptible to hacks. Same thing with the software. I mean, the Auditor General's report identified quite a number of ministries and departments using different applications to perform similar functions. And that would result in considerable waste to the taxpayer. So what is the Ministry of Public Administration doing about this to ensure that ministries and government departments adhere to the standards set by iGov?
Thank you, Member. Basically, coming out of recommendations from the Auditor General's report, the Ministry of Public Administration was tasked with certain initiatives or activities to undertake. And two of which we have done. We have engaged at the Permanent Secretary's level, Ministry of Finance, where we have asked and are collaborating in terms of ensuring and monitoring the ICT spend, expenditure on ICT. In the Auditor General's report regarding information technology assessment and expenditure on ICT, it was recommended that we should have amendments to the chart of accounts and classification of expenditure for both recurrent and development program. So we have engaged the Ministry of Finance to ensure that we do have a separate line item in each ministry, because we have observed over the years regarding ICT spend, it can be used in various votes. So you're not able to really monitor. So we do hope in the next financial year And in the production of our recurrent expenditure, we'll have a separate item for ICT expenditure across ministries. And back home in the Ministry of Public Administration, we will be putting in our monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. Secondly, we are engaging the Ministry of Planning and Development in respect to all ICT projects and initiatives that are presented under the PSIP. And I will invite and ask the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Planning and Development, to explain the collaboration with our ministry in terms of effectively monitoring that type of expenditure under the PSIP. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, member, as PS just alluded, at present, the system that obtains in terms of new projects coming into the PSIP, including ICT projects, they are basically assessed by the Ministry of Public Planning and Development, yes, and included in the PSIP. Based on the report we're seeing from the Auditor General in terms of duplication and lack of integration across the ministries, as PS alluded, the Ministry of Planning and Development and the Ministry of Public Administration would now be working on a collaborative effort in terms of new projects coming into the PSIP would have to go to the Ministry of Public Administration for their assessment in terms of the software that is being procured, the hardware that is being procured, how it is going to be integrated. We get their consideration, their considered view, and their recommendation, and then the Ministry of Planning and Development would then include those projects within the public sector investment program. So that is what is being proposed moving forward.
And how does that work? I'm talking in practice. So it goes to the budget is passed, the appropriation bill is passed, and it goes to the ministry. It's a part of their PSIP. But the team lead for that project, that ICT project, is reticent or resistant to gaining the advice of iGovTT, and he just goes off and he does his procurement within the procurement rules, but he does his procurement. But he has no regard for the standards set by iGovTT. What happens then?
Sure. The Ministry of Planning and Development has the authority to deny such ministry or agency funding if it is we have, upon approval and you're recognizing that you are not complying with the National ICT Plan, you're not complying with Ministry of Public Administration strictures, we can recommend that no funding should be released by the Ministry of Finance.
Okay. And another issue, Chairman. You mentioned, Chairman of iGov, you mentioned court pay and gov pay. Well, gov pay, and I know about court pay. But I don't know much about it. But from the little I know, it seems to be a major transformative ICT solution in the public sector. Could you tell us a little bit, tell us about that?
Sure, I can, through you, Chair. Thanks for highlighting this. Now, as a prelude to the response, I just want to point out again that a lot of the things relating to ICT in terms of impact happen way before the impact, as we recognize, and a lot of it is foundational, a lot of the technology, the people, the processes, etc. And John and Jane Public, as you mentioned, Chair, through facilities such as this, might not be aware of such. Now, in terms of facilities such as GovPay TT, I'll deal with that. That would essentially allow for a lot of the sort of financial transactional type activities to occur, provided that the relevant legislation is in place, etc. And a lot of that is already the case right now. In terms of court pay, I'm just going to respond to that by putting it in terms of the impact to John and Jane Public. Well, it just so happens that there was an event last week, a public event relating to the launching of court pay, essentially. And to put it in terms for John and Jane Public to understand, I have made sure that I am not going above 100 kilometers per hour because I don't want to know that when I reach home, it's an email waiting on me. And by it, I mean the thing that I would now have to pay right? So in terms of the end-to-end type activities, what things like court pay allows is it allows for the ICT facilitated services that relate to all of those transactional activities that the citizenry would face with respect to interaction or interface with the judiciary and so forth. I could also, to give you further specifics if required, defer to one of my board members if they would be willing to offer any additional information.
Yeah, I want to understand if you can quantify the impact to the citizenry, where we're coming from and what it's now going to be, and how the citizens are going to benefit from this. Because it's not just not just tickets, right? Not just traffic tickets. It may be maintenance payments, you know, any financial service that you interact with the court. Yeah.
If I may, through you, Chair. What you're referring to in Court P also integrates with the Ministry of Works and Transport's U-turn traffic management system, which is integrated into paying tickets. And it is also linked to the piloting of GovPay using the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, where we will be piloting very soon, actually, persons being able to go online and pay or utilize any service that is offered by the Registrar General's Department as well as the Intellectual Property Office. They can select their service, they can pay for it using their credit card online, and it will also be delivered directly to them, meaning you have a complete end-to-end service. It will impact in terms of the citizens not having to line up and wait for several hours. People with children will not have to bear the inconvenience of traveling far distances, and it will also impact upon the diaspora who there are, for any government service, people or nationals who live abroad or are abroad who would like to access those services and can do so online. How it integrates with the other ministries is that this is a pilot, and it is anticipated that when it is launched, we would be looking at launching the Ministry of Works and Transport, this ministry has made significant advancements through their U-turn traffic management system, where there's going to be an integration with red light camera enforcement, spot speed cameras, and a ticketing system. That interlinks with court pay because no longer will you have to go to the relevant magistrate's court in the relevant jurisdiction or area district that you received a ticket and have to wait during certain hours and hope to be able to pay your ticket. As for court pay, I understand that the chair has alluded to the official launch of the electronic case management system that took place by the judiciary on Friday. And they are looking at right now moving from just having not only maintenance payments that you can access electronically or through electronic channels, various electronic channels, but they're looking at expanding that to the other fees, fines, and penalties which you would have to pay into court. And all of this integrates into making it very much easier for the citizen or general members of the public to access government services and transact their business online.
So in other words, citizens don't have to line up on Leotold Street in the hot sun anymore outside the Registrar General's office. Thank you very much. And I'll just add this advice to the chairman of iGov. I know that you would want to bring awareness to this new solution, but my advice to you is that you also bring awareness of iGov's role in bringing this solution. You know, bring awareness to the competencies and to increase your credibility, so that more ministries and departments would use your services in bringing these solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Henry.
Yes. Morning, everyone, again. My first question is very basic. Is there a substantive CEO, and why isn't he here? Of the company? Yeah, you are the deputy CEO, right?
I believe that, yes, there is a substantive CEO. And I believe that the explanation should have been offered in writing, and to the best of my knowledge, it was so done. I can't speak beyond that. At this point, however, I would also put forward that it is our belief that at least with the team that we have here, we should be able to respond at least and represent for iGov sufficiently at this point.
Okay. I have a general question in terms of the government is in the process of implementing a financial information management system. I know it's primarily handled by the Ministry of Finance, right? But are any of the entities here involved in that? Who could shed light on what is going on with that?
Chair, through you, the Integrated Financial Management Information System is an IDB-funded project.
Yes,
and I would defer to Mr. Mitchell for some more details in terms of the IFMIS project.
Hi, good morning. Yes, we are working in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance in operationalizing the system. Basically, what the system intends to do is to allow interconnectivity between the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Planning, and the line ministries with respect to submission of their expenditure requests, their requests for allocation, requests for release of funds, and so forth. So what we're trying to do is to do that electronically, and also is going to improve in terms of how we accurately assessed on a monthly basis how government expenditure is proceeding. We're going to assess in real time the quantum of releases to ministries and so forth. The Ministry of Planning's role is for the capital expenditure side of the program, and right now there's a team internally in the Ministry of Planning that is working with the Ministry of Finance in terms of upgrading the Ministry of Planning, the PPRD division, the Project Planning and Reconstruction division's internal processes to meet that challenge. Also, the IFMIS is part of our IDB loan, which includes a training component for not only the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Planning, but also line ministries as well. There are certain components that will be rolled out very soon, and I think the Ministry of Finance will be better able to answer where the status on that rollout of the training component of the loan program is. But in relation to the use of ICT in terms of government public expenditure management, we are looking forward to it with eager anticipation because it will improve how we can track where value for money is being done in terms of how government expenditure is being done.
Thanks for your answer, but the reason I asked the question is because this represents here, this particular grouping of people, iGov plus all the other entities, really comprise the National ICT Trust in total. So who is going to manage, and how could they not be involved in a project like that? You know, that's really what I'm getting at. You know, so when the consultant is finished with the financial information management system, what is going to happen after? All right, that's the point I'm getting at. But I'll go on to something else quickly because I know we're running out of time. In terms of one of the things the Auditor General flagged very clearly was the business continuity and disaster recovery. Can anyone update us on what is the status of those of progress in terms of implementing?
Thank you, Member. I'll answer. The Ministry would have had a business continuity management project in 2014-15 where we would have engaged PricewaterhouseCoopers on a consultancy, and in our response to the committee, we would have shared that 5 agencies were part of that project where we developed and implemented business continuity plans. Due to staff challenges within the ministry, the program was paused, but we have recommenced it in the last year where we have put in place a committee within the Ministry of Public Administration, and we are seeking firstly to re-implement business continuity at the Ministry of Public Administration and rebuild capability and specifically receive certification in BCM in order to provide support and coordination services to the rest of the public service. In the 2020 PSIP, we submitted a project to receive certified training. Once we get that funding, we will be able to have the capability to start working on implementing across a selection of government ministries and departments to, again, work with them to develop their business continuity plans. Business continuity comprises not just the DRP, that is the disaster recovery associated with ICT systems. It also covers the the emergency response planning aspect, where we try to account for and treat with our employees, and then of course the business processes necessary to ensure the continuity of service delivery.
Okay, my final question is, I was told by a friend that a friend of his jaywalked in a particular country recently, and he got a picture on his phone with him jaywalking, a copy of the ticket, and the money deducted from his bank account. Right. Mr. Chairman of IGov, on a scale of 1 to 10, how far are we away from 1 to 10?
Oh boy, I seem to be getting all the hard questions, well, right now. In respect to a service like that, I would say that we are a little bit lower than 6, you know. However, I would also respond to qualify that I'm not sure what the country is or who the friend is, but they would have been at a particularly different point developmentally to us, and they would have different challenges to us. So I would put that scoring in that context as well.
All right then. Thank you very much for your responses to our questions and for the information that you provided to the general public. I want to close at this point. We were hoping to close at about 12:15, but we had to satisfy some of the questions here, and secondly, to give you time to give the kind of answers that you wanted to give. Before I close, though, I want to ask the Auditor General just one question, which has to do with the fact that she indicated that she had 2019 responses from the various ministries. And from your point of view, based on the issues, the audit that you did in 2016, the issues that you flagged in 2017, and some of the issues that you continued to raise in 2018, what kind of progress are you seeing, and where do the deficits remain that need serious attention?
Thank you, Chair, but I think there needs to be a bit of clarification. We received our response from the Ministry of Public Administration, which is basically just addressing the matters that they have raised here today.
Okay.
In the context of what you're asking, our discussion prior to coming here is that we are looking to actually, again, we're not going to do a full audit, but what we're seeking to do is, again, circularize to get a better understanding of where the ministries and departments really are from the point of view of ICT governance framework, because the national plan is supposed to be their framework. And they have spoken here today about strategic alignment, collaboration, coordination, elimination of silos, these sorts of things. So we are hoping now that we're going to go back and address, recircularize, we're going to tweak based on the level of questioning that we've had here today. Some of our questions may have to be tweaked to bring them up to date. And we're going to be recircularizing, again, the ministries and departments with a view to really getting an understanding of where we are. And again, we're going to be submitting a report on those findings so that we can see that based on this is the response and this is what ministries and departments are saying, because this is what we're trying to get a grip of. What are the gaps? What are the deficiencies? And is the plan really moving forward towards a strategic alignment, collaboration, and coordination? Because our concern is governance and ensuring that a proper governance structure exists. And so that's where we're going to be taking off from with regard to this year and with regard to the response that we received from the Ministry of Public Admin.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. I would say that, you know, we are heartened by some of the responses, and we are certainly happy that we've had this engagement. But I can't say that I have the comfort level. I don't know if my colleagues will agree with me. I can't say that I have the comfort level that we are moving at the pace we need to, given the pace at which the rest of the world is moving. I have a real problem with that, and I don't take the sevens. I don't accept them. Maybe the 2 was a little harsh, all right? But I feel that, at best, I feel we might be around a 5 somewhere, and we have a lot to go in terms of achieving some of the basics as well as the higher tier levels of achievement. And given where some countries are and what they are doing, and I'm talking about countries that are not really regarded as much better than we are in developmental terms, but they have made significant progress in the ICT and in the digital economy. And it's working and it's operational. And even though they may be dysfunctional in other areas, and they may be less developed than us in other aspects, yet they have been able to make significant strides in some of these areas. So I think this is something that we need to push. I think all my colleagues here would agree with me that, I mean, we need to take our country forward at a much faster pace. You know, and the governmental services are critical in terms of what you are able to do with the rest of the population for the other things to lift. I mean, this might sound like a trite thing to say, but really the private sector is highly dependent on the efficiency and effectiveness of the public sector. And their ability to compete, if we are to compete as a country, I mean, is really hampered by the inability of the public service to deliver. The citizen is distressed when they can't get their business fixed through ICT services at a rapid rate, and they have to take a taxi and come to town or get a bus to come to town or go some other place. I mean, these things are really, really vital for us. And so what I would say is, yes, you have what I sense might be some of the challenges that we might want to address, and I speak also to my colleague members who are ministers in the cabinet. I would say, well, yes, you need the policy decisions, and that is true. And in order to get the policy decisions made, you have to be able, let's say iGov or one of the ministries is preparing the cabinet note. I mean, the clarity and precision with which you have to answer the questions that cabinet will ask before they ask it in the note become very important for something like this, you know, and to get the policy decisions made. The second thing is that we need some kind of coordinated action. Now, that is really the role of the Ministry of Public Administration. And now that you are collaborating with planning, not just on the PSIP thing, but if you are able to do that, because planning has an overarching view of what's happening developmentally in the country. And public administration would have an overarching view of what the public service is doing in its various ministries, etc., that are ICT related. And these things really need to come together at that level of coordination. I think the question Minister Mitchell was really asking about ICT and about iGov, and asking them to publicize what they do and what are the capabilities that they have, really relate to this issue of how iGov relates to the coordination and implementation function in the various ministries. And if what you are saying is true, which is that you have decentralized implementation, then it seems to me that one of iGov's role has to be which ministry are you under? Well, one of the things that the Ministry of Public Administration has to do is to empower you to act in each ministry that you visit and advise and support for implementation. They have to empower you to make sure that that decentralized action actually happens as it advances the rollout of government policy. Or else the process is just going to be slowed. If you don't have the authority and you just come in here as an advisor and so on, no, you know realities of Trinidad and Tobago, nobody are taking you on. So, there has to be that element of it. And then, of course, the people and the infrastructure and the will to results. This will to results is a democratic deficit, in countries like ours. I want to be quite frank with you. This will to results is the consequence of democracy and is a deficit in the process, which is why we cannot get a lot of things done. And we have to find a way of getting, through the policy decision making, the coordinated action, and the decentralized implementation under expert advice and guidance. We have to take care of that will to results. So yes, okay, go ahead. Yes, and therefore we close now, and I thank you again for your contribution. And we have a lot of questions still. There are 100 questions in my mind about a lot of things. And we are going to put some questions together and send to you for written answers. Okay? So thank you very much. We close. We bring this meeting to a close.